An action game set within a mythical Rome, Ryse is a bombastic expression of power. The hero is a soldier of such skill and stature that, when the game is played well, feels unassailable. The strength of its technology makes the details of the world appear realistic and natural, and spends the same effort on bloodshed. With these strengths, Ryse finds a certain measure of glory, but it has its limits. Next-gen gaming wasn't built in a day. The technical prowess of Ryse is made clear in the game's opening moments, and it's not long after that the game demonstrates an aptitude for legionary warfare. The destruction of Rome's enemies is accomplished with the most straightforward weapons of war, and fighting can be rhythmic and precise. One button strikes with your gladius, another button bashes with your shield, which also functions to brush aside incoming attacks with a well-timed button press. This last action is crucial to your survival, and efficiently butchering your opponents is largely a matter of timing. In the best circumstances, you'll time each strike to begin just as the last blow lands, stunning enemies with a shield bash if they get shy about meeting your blade. When they swing, you parry the blow and immediately resume your offensive. Convincing motions are interrupted when the character suddenly changes direction or tumbles like an acrobat, but the ability to quickly react lets you deal with being frequently surrounded on all sides. There are times when your view is obscured or the game stutters and throws off your timing, but in most cases, your skill will carry you through. Executions are the brutal highlight of Ryse's battles. When you've sufficiently tenderized your targets, a skull icon will appear over their heads. When you squeeze the trigger, you'll enter a choreographed sequence of pitiless slaughter. These executions can become increasingly extravagant as you land more consecutive hits, attaching dramatic weight to the act of killing. The spectacle provides room to breathe in the midst of hectic fights and lets you relish your dominance for a moment, but you'll be allowed to become an increasingly detached spectator as you repeat the same actions ad infinitum. Your victims too often look like willing participants in their own murders, sliding into place like props or appearing to charge in or fall on cue. And while the game rewards you with points for hitting the correct button at the proper time, the scene will play out the same way whether you hit the right button, the wrong button, or no button at all. It's hard not to grow complacent when you realize your continued involvement in a man's death and dismemberment is largely optional, particularly when you're doing something you've literally done 100 times before. Responsive controls and steady momentum will keep you engaged in Ryse's constant war-making, but repetition unavoidably dulls the edge. The story that runs parallel to your actions will see our hero Marius promoted to Centurion and later take on the persona of a legendary warrior to pursue his vengeance in the arena. But this sense of growth is never shared with the player. Experience points are reaped every moment and tallied on screen, but the progression of your abilities is almost superficial. Absorbing more damage only allows for more room for error, and new executions feel interchangeable. Nearly every attempt to build on Ryse's solid foundation feels insubstantial. You can select what the game calls perks using the D-pad, allowing different methods of executions which confer small bonus effects. It's overcomplicated and poorly integrated, and it rarely feels worthwhile. Restoring your health is the only truly indispensable option, and while you may sometimes want to build focus faster to go into a time-slowing frenzy, this highly effective attack looks less than impressive.
Steady shields! Hold testudo!
The further the game strays from its core combat, the less it gains. Commanding your troops is always the same: adopt a defensive formation when arrows fly your way, then march forward to close distance. It's also far too often that you're asked to man a stationary crossbow. Awkward, rapid-fire shooting only serves to damage the game's pace and feels outright silly in the vaguely historical setting. An odd lock-on mechanic makes the simple act of throwing a javelin clumsy, and later on, what should be exciting battles against singularly powerful opponents feels like simplistic back-and-forth exchanges. There's evidence of wasted effort here, but the beauty of the world feels like the result of concentrated Herculean labor. The visual fidelity is impressive, and Ryse effectively plays with light and sound to create effective shifts in mood. If only the endless killing felt as dynamic as the atmosphere. One moment you'll marvel at an impressive vista or an incredible sight, and the next you're doing a familiar dance of death with a bearded, heavyset Briton you've already killed a dozen times over. The Great Colosseum that plays a part in the story also hosts a separate cooperative mode. The action that transpires here is disappointingly identical to the barbarian bashing you'll see everywhere else in the game, but transforming scenery and randomized objectives may tempt you to spill just a bit more blood for the gods. The basic gameplay is satisfying enough that cooperating with another player can be enjoyable, even if your ultimate motivation is obtaining a better grab bag of random items purchased with your arena winnings, or with your real-life wallet. Ryse is well suited to make its entrance alongside a new console, as some of its faults can be overlooked for its commendable bravado and convincing demonstration of power. The bloody spectacle of war and gladiatorial combat are thrilling to behold, and Ryse demonstrates competence, even if it falls short of mastery. If Rome were to rise again, one would imagine it would be greater.